Beirut, July 1995. 800 men kneel in unison. Friday prayers fill the Imam Rida Mosque. At the front stands Sheikh Ahmad Barakeh, cleric, commander, protected by faith and routine. Israeli intelligence knows he cannot be touched here, surrounded by witnesses and walls thick with trust. But in the front row sits an elderly deaf man. He wears a beige coat. He arrives every week. Inside his hearing aid is a device no metal detector would ever find. A pneumatic dart loaded with ricin. When the congregation bows, one head stays steady. This is Operation Quiet Echo. Sheikh Ahmad Barakeh was not born a warrior. He entered the world in 1953 in a village south of the Litani River, where Israeli patrols would later become routine. His childhood ended in June 1982, when Israeli forces moved through southern Lebanon. Barakeh watched his uncle's home destroyed in shelling meant for someone else. The family survived. The trust didn't. By age 29, Barakeh had traded religious scholarship for something darker, legitimacy weaponized. He became dangerous not through violence, but through credibility. By the early 1990s, Israeli intelligence assessed him as a dual-role operator. He was a religious authority who coordinated Hezbollah logistics across southern Lebanon. His sermons attracted hundreds. His private meetings attracted operatives. He recruited through mosques, fundraised through charity networks, and mediated disputes that gave Hezbollah deep civilian roots. Associates described him as measured, never impulsive. He carried no weapons. He carried trust instead. This made him strategically irreplaceable. Barakeh didn't plan attacks. He enabled them. He connected cells, approved routes, and provided religious cover for operations that needed clerical blessing. Israeli planners understood the calculation. Killing him publicly would trigger political firestorm. Letting him operate meant Hezbollah retained a stabilizing node Israel couldn't easily disrupt. By late 1994, signals intelligence tied Barakeh to cross-border planning cells operating near Marjayun. Intercepted communications showed him approving safe houses and authorizing fund transfers. He was assessed as non-replaceable in the short term. The problem was simple. Barakeh never left protected spaces. His Friday routine was perfect, predictable, and shielded by the one thing Israeli doctrine struggled to penetrate: religious sanctuary. Intelligence services had tracked Barakeh for 18 months. By March 1995, Mossad concluded Barakeh represented an infrastructure threat that arrests couldn't reach and airstrikes couldn't justify. The authorization to act came in April 1995. Mossad called this the targeted prevention doctrine, refined after the first intifada. The logic was straightforward. Eliminate coordinators before attacks materialize, not after casualties mount. Arrest was impossible in Beirut. Airstrikes were unthinkable inside a mosque packed with civilians. Proxy assets were unreliable. Lebanese informants operated under constant Hezbollah counterintelligence pressure. Planners chose micro-assassination tradecraft, a method designed to mimic natural death. The operation needed three outcomes: 0 collateral casualties, 0 attribution, and 0 forensic signature. The obstacles were immediate. First, sanctuary. The Imam Rida Mosque operated under religious protection that even Hezbollah respected. Second, density. 800 worshippers created an environment where any weapon discharge would be heard, seen, or felt. Third, attribution. Even suspicion of Israeli involvement would transform Barakeh into a martyr and strengthen Hezbollah's narrative. Despite these challenges, planners identified an opportunity. Barakeh's routine was his vulnerability. Every Friday at 12:41 hours, he entered through the eastern gate. Prayer began, at 12:52 hours. Prostration occurred exactly 17 minutes later. His position never varied. Third row, left of the pulpit, always surrounded by regulars who knew him. For 6 months, Unit Caesarea mapped the mosque with granular precision. Prayer timing was recorded to the second. Guard rotations were documented. Entry patterns were filmed from 3 angles. Analysts identified Barakeh's exact prostration position using telephoto surveillance from an apartment 2 blocks east. The congregation's density was measured. Sight lines were calculated. Emergency exits were counted. The trigger came in June 1995. Intelligence intercepts revealed Barakeh approving a new operational channel to southern Lebanon through Tyre. The assessment shifted from monitoring to execution. Within 14 days, all elements would be in position. But first, one critical element needed resolution. The operative had to become invisible. During the 3rd week of surveillance, the team leader faced what Mossad calls legend drift. The operative assigned to Asset Aleph 7, the elderly deaf man, had spent 6 weeks inhabiting the identity. He memorized not just the cover story, but the physicality, the slight tremor in the left hand, the way deaf men tilt their heads to compensate, the careful, slow movements of someone who has learned not to startle others. In the post-operation debrief, psychologists noted the operative reported thinking in character, even during off hours. He caught himself reaching for the hearing aid when alone in his apartment. The legend was bleeding into identity. Handlers considered pulling him. The assessment concluded the drift enhanced authenticity rather than compromised judgment. But the mission continued under tighter supervision. Intercepted communications from June 19th reveal Barakeh discussing his daughter's upcoming wedding with his wife. Analysts noted nothing operationally relevant. Barakeh mentioned wanting to officiate the ceremony himself, worried about finding time between Friday services and coordination meetings. When the dart entered his neck 3 weeks later, the wedding invitations were already printed. His daughter married in August. Her father's chair at the head table remained empty. By July 15th, the operation entered its execution phase. Barakeh approved the Tyre operational channel during a meeting at a safe house in Dahiyeh. Israeli signals intelligence confirmed the authorization within 6 hours. The window was 9 days, long enough to verify final preparations, short enough to prevent pattern disruption. Asset Aleph 7 had attended 5 consecutive Friday prayers. One more would establish unshakable routine. Then the operation would proceed. The infrastructure required for Operation Quiet Echo was built across 3 countries over 4 months. Each element was compartmentalized. Operatives never met planners directly. Orders were transmitted through dead drops and encrypted burst transmissions that lasted under 3 seconds. Documents and identities formed the foundation. Asset Aleph 7's legend was constructed around Hussein Darwish, a fictional Sunni pensioner born in Tripoli in 1923. The identity included a Lebanese national ID card with authentication markers verified against genuine documents acquired through separate channels. Directive 17 CAF authorized the legend's backstory. Hearing loss from industrial accident in 1968. Widower since 1989. Regular mosque attendee documented through fabricated attendance logs inserted into community records 6 months before operational deployment. Equipment development consumed 8 weeks. The pneumatic dart gun measured 12 centimeters long and weighed 97 grams. It was compressed air-driven, with no chemical propellant signature. Mossad engineers designed it to fit inside a modified Siemens hearing aid shell, model HB14. The toxin was ricin, extracted from castor beans and refined to 94% purity. Dosage calculations were tested on ballistic gel. 3 millimeters of penetration was sufficient. The dart itself was titanium, hollow core, 1.8 millimeters in diameter. Upon impact, the tip fragmented, releasing toxin while leaving fragments too small for standard autopsy detection. Communication systems operated on a one-way model. The surveillance team transmitted to the operative through a dead drop inside a newspaper stand on Rue Hamra. Coded messages appeared in classified ads of Al Nahar newspaper. Apartment for rent, Sea View, available Friday, meant proceed. Apartment rented meant abort. The operative never transmitted outward. Silence was confirmation. Escape routes were pre-staged. After execution, Asset Aleph 7 would exit the mosque, walk 4 blocks north to the Corniche, and enter a pharmacy where a Lebanese cutout would provide a change of clothing. From there, a taxi driven by a Druze Asset would transport him to a safe apartment in Ashrafiyeh. Exfiltration from Lebanon would occur 72 hours later through Junia port aboard a fishing vessel registered to a Greek shipping company that existed only on paper. The team structure reflected extreme compartmentalization. Surveillance specialists tracked Barakeh's movements and congregation patterns. They included 2 Lebanese nationals recruited through financial leverage and 1 Mossad officer operating under Belgian diplomatic cover. The execution team consisted of Asset Aleph 7 and 1 backup operative positioned outside the mosque in case primary extraction failed. Technical support operated from a safe apartment in Hamra. 2 communication specialists who monitored police frequencies and mosque security patterns. Each operative knew only their immediate function to prevent full compromise if any single element was captured. The planning consumed 19 weeks. By July 8th, the device had been tested successfully on 3 separate occasions using ballistic gel torsos positioned to replicate the mosque's spatial constraints. Asset Aleph 7 had 21 hours before final positioning began. The next phase depended entirely on timing measured in seconds. July 15th, 1995. At 1100 hours, Asset Aleph 7 left the safe apartment in Akrafi. He wore the beige coat, carried a worn leather Quran, and moved with the careful deliberation his legend demanded. Surveillance confirmed Barakeh left his home in Haret Hraik at 11:35 hours, following his standard route toward the mosque. Over the next 40 minutes, Asset Aleph 7 approached the Imam Rida Mosque on foot. He had walked this route 6 times before. Every step was rehearsed. At the corner of Rue Al-Kansa and Rue Verdun, he purchased a newspaper from the same vendor, a detail that reinforced routine. The vendor recognized him now, nodded without speaking. Small confirmations of invisibility. By 12:28 hours, Asset Aleph 7 entered the mosque courtyard. Shoes removed, ablutions performed at the fountain with the same methodical precision he had demonstrated for weeks. An elderly man who rushed would draw attention. An elderly deaf man who rushed would draw suspicion. He moved as if time didn't press. Inside the prayer hall, the congregation was assembling. The mosque could hold 900. On Fridays, it reached capacity. Asset Aleph 7 took his position in the front row, 4th from the left side of the pulpit. The spot had been chosen for 3 reasons: proximity to Barakeh's 3rd row position, clear sightline during prostration, and immediate access to the eastern exit. 41 minutes before execution, a complication emerged. A late-arriving group of worshippers disrupted the row formation. 3 men shuffled into the 3rd row, forcing those already seated to compress leftward. Barakeh's position shifted 15 centimeters. Asset Aleph 7 calculated angles. The device's effective range was 35 centimeters. The shift placed Barakeh at the edge of operational parameters. The operative faced a decision point, abort and reset the entire operation, risking pattern disruption, or proceed and accept margin of error risk. In the post-operation debrief, he described the calculation as purely mechanical. The dart's trajectory would compensate for lateral shift if he rotated his head 3 degrees right during prostration. The human element, doubt, fear, didn't factor. The legend had consumed the man entirely. At 12:52 hours, the call to prayer began. The imam's voice filled the hall. 800 men stood. Asset Aleph 7 stood with them, hands folded, eyes forward. The device sat against his skull, inert and weightless. Prayer proceeded through standard sequence. Standing recitation, bowing, rising. The congregation moved as one organism. Individual bodies disappeared into collective rhythm. This was the operational truth Mossad relied on. Collective ritual creates individual blindness. When 800 men bow in unison, no one watches their neighbor. At 13:09 hours, the execution window opened. The imam called for prostration. Foreheads touched carpet. The prayer hall became a sea of bent backs and bowed heads. 8 seconds of opportunity. Asset Aleph 7 remained upright. His hand moved to the hearing aid with a slow, natural gesture of adjustment. The device rotated inward. The compressed air chamber aligned. Barakeh's neck was visible 3 rows ahead, exposed skin between hairline and collar. No click, no recoil. The dart traveled 32 centimeters in 0.4 seconds. It entered the back of Barakeh's neck 2 centimeters below the hairline, slightly right of center spine. The titanium tip fragmented on impact. Ricin dispersed into subcutaneous tissue. The wound measured 1.9 millimeters in diameter. No blood emerged. No sound occurred. Barakeh's body registered the impact as pressure, not pain. He continued prostration. Ricin requires 15 to 45 minutes to manifest symptoms depending on dosage and injection site. The operation required him to collapse inside the mosque to avoid pursuit complications. 90 seconds after impact, Barakeh attempted to rise from prostration. His arms trembled. Worshippers on either side noticed first. They saw him struggle, assumed age or fatigue. At 98 seconds, his left arm gave out. He collapsed forward onto the carpet. The congregation reacted with concern, not alarm. Heart attacks in elderly worshippers were not unprecedented. Guards moved to create space. Someone called for a doctor. The imam paused prayer, announced medical emergency, requested calm. Bodies stood and shifted. Asset Aleph 7 rose slowly, joining the general movement toward exits. His role was finished. The device remained in place. Removing it would require hand movements too precise for an elderly man in crowd conditions. Outside, he crossed Rue Verdun and entered the pharmacy at number 47. The Lebanese cutout waited behind the counter. In the back room, Asset Aleph 7 removed the beige coat and hearing aid. The device was wrapped in cloth and placed in a canvas bag. The hearing aid shell, now empty, was dropped into a storm drain on Rue Al-Kanza while walking to the taxi pickup point. At 13:17 hours, a taxi driven by the Druze Asset picked up a man in a gray suit at the corner of Rue Hamra and Rue Jeanne d'Arc. The man carried no identification linking him to Hussein Darwish. By 13:42 hours, he entered the safe apartment in Ashrafiyeh. 71 hours remained until exfiltration. Barakeh was lifted by guards and carried to a vehicle outside. He was pronounced dead at 13:53 hours before reaching Rafik Hariri University Hospital. Cause of death was recorded as sudden cardiac event. Operation Quiet Echo was complete. By 1600 hours, Hezbollah's internal security apparatus understood that Sheikh Ahmad Barakeh's death was not natural. The timing, during prayer, in front of witnesses, suggested either medical crisis or something far more sophisticated. No weapon was found. No suspects were identified. Guards who carried him reported no visible wounds. But the leadership didn't believe in coincidence. Every worshiper in the front 3 rows was questioned within 24 hours. Hussein Darwish, the elderly deaf man, was sought for routine interview. He could not be located. His registered address in Tripoli led to a building that had no record of him. The national ID card was genuine in every technical aspect, but the person it described had never existed. Every lead ended in authentication without substance, suggesting operational tradecraft beyond standard terrorist or criminal capability. Lebanese authorities closed the case within 6 days. Official cause of death remained cardiac arrest. Hezbollah issued no public statement. Israel maintained complete silence. The denials were transparent to those in regional intelligence services. But transparency wasn't the point. Plausible deniability preserved diplomatic channels while sending an unambiguous message. Religious sanctuary was no longer absolute. The tactical objective was accomplished. Sheikh Ahmad Barakeh was eliminated without collateral casualties, without attribution, and without forensic evidence. Intelligence gained included confirmation that pneumatic delivery systems could defeat mosque security protocols, and that ricin's delayed symptom onset created operational windows previously considered impossible. Secondary benefits included psychological disruption of Hezbollah's clerical network and proof of concept for micro-assassination tradecraft in high-density civilian environments. The operation revealed technical capabilities Mossad had intended to preserve for future use. Within 3 months, Hezbollah increased security at all religious sites. Metal detectors were installed at major mosques. Congregational patterns were monitored for anomalies. The tradecraft advantage lasted exactly 94 days before countermeasures eroded its effectiveness. For individuals beyond Barakeh, the consequences were measured in lives not taken. Hezbollah lost a coordinator whose recruitment networks had channeled an estimated 40 operatives into cross-border cells between 1993 and 1995. Israeli intelligence assessed that Barakeh's elimination disrupted planning cycles for at least 2 operations scheduled for late 1995. Whether those operations would have succeeded and how many casualties they might have caused remains unknowable. The calculation exists only in the theoretical space of prevented futures. Relations with Lebanon were unaffected officially. Israel and Lebanon maintained no formal diplomatic ties. Unofficially, Lebanese intelligence services understood the operation's sophistication indicated state-level capability. The message was received, but reception and deterrence are different outcomes. Hezbollah's response was institutional hardening, not operational withdrawal. Mossad's assessment was that tactical success outweighed strategic costs. The operation demonstrated precision targeting capability in environments previously considered untouchable. The cost was burning a methodology that required years to develop and could only be used once before adaptation. Whether this proved correct would become clear over the following decade, as targeted killings expanded and sacred spaces became contested terrain. The paradox embedded in Operation Quiet Echo remains unresolved. Was Sheikh Ahmad Barakeh a legitimate military target coordinating attacks against civilians? Or a religious figure assassinated in violation of sanctuary norms that date back millennia? Intelligence services argue the former with specificity. Intercepts, cell connections, operational approvals. Critics argue the latter with equal conviction. A man killed during worship, surrounded by the faithful without trial or public evidence. From one perspective, this was precision warfare executed with surgical discipline. One man eliminated, 800 civilians unharmed, no bomb, no chaos, no innocent casualties. The method itself demonstrated respect for human life by choosing the most difficult, most expensive, most restrictive approach possible. From another perspective, this was a line crossed that cannot be uncrossed, turning a mosque into a battlefield without consent, using religious routine as tactical vulnerability, proving that no space, no matter how sacred, how protected, how trusted, remains off limits when intelligence capabilities evolve beyond ethical frameworks designed for different eras. The answer reveals more about your worldview than about Barakeh. If you believe prevention justifies penetration of sacred spaces, Operation Quiet Echo represents operational excellence. If you believe some boundaries should remain absolute regardless of threat assessment, it represents civilizational erosion. What's your take on whether religious sanctuary should protect military coordinators? Does the precision of the method matter when evaluating the violation of the space? If intelligence services can kill silently inside places of worship, should anything still be considered genuinely off limits? Or is that belief itself the greatest vulnerability? Drop your perspective in the comments. If this story made you reconsider where the line sits between security and sanctity, hit that like button and share.